The Miller's Tale. Words between the host and the miller. When we heard the tale the knight had told, not one among the pilgrims, young or old, but said it was indeed a noble story, worthy to be remembered for its glory. And it especially pleased the gentlefolk. Our host began to laugh and swore in joke. "It's going well, we've opened up the bale. Now let me see, who'll tell another tale. Upon my soul, the game has begun well. Come on, Sir Monk, if you've a tale to tell. Repay the knight a little for his tale." The miller, very drunk and rather pale, was straddled on his horse half on half off, and in no mood for manners or to doff his hood or hat, or wait on any man. But in a voice like Pilate's he began to huff and swear, "By blood and bones and belly, I've got a noble story I can tell ye. I'll pay the knight his wages, not the monk." Our host perceived at once that he was drunk, and said, "Now hold on, Robin, dear old brother. We'll get some better man to tell another. You wait a bit, let's have some common sense." "God's soul, I won't," said he, "at all events. I mean to talk, or else I'll go my way." Our host replied, "Well, blast you then, you may. You fool, your wits have gone beyond recall. Now listen," said the miller, "one and all, to what I have to say, but first I'm bound to say I'm drunk, I know it by my sound. And if the words get muddled in my tale, just put it down to too much Southwark ale. I will relate a legend and a life of an old carpenter and of his wife, and how a student came and set his cap. The reeve looked up and shouted, 'Shut your trap. Give over with your drunken harlotry. It is a sin and foolishness,' said he, 'to slander any man or bring a scandal. On wives in general, why can't you handle some other tale? There's other things beside.' To this the drunken miller then replied, 'My dear old brother Oswald, such is life. A man's no cuckold if he has no wife. For all that, I'm not saying you are one. There's many virtuous wives, all said and done. Ever 1,000 good for one that's bad. As well you know yourself, unless you're mad. Why are you angry? What is this to do? I have a wife, God knows, as well as you. Yet not for all the oxen in my plough would I engage to take it on me now. To think myself a cuckold, just because I'm pretty sure I'm not and never was. One shouldn't be too inquisitive in life, either about God's secrets or one's wife. You'll find God's plenty all you could desire. Of the remainder, better not inquire. What can I add?" The miller had begun. He would not hold his peace for anyone, but told his churl's tale his own way, I fear. And I regret I must repeat it here. And so I beg of all who are refined, for God's love not to think me ill-inclined, or evil in my purpose, I rehearse. Their tales is told, for better or for worse. For else I should be false to what occurred. So if this tale had better not be heard, just turn the page and choose another sort. You'll find them here in plenty, long and short. Many historical, that will profess morality, good breeding, saintliness. Do not blame me if you should choose amiss. The miller was a churl, I've told you this. So was the reeve, and other some as well. And harlotry was all they had to tell. Consider then, and hold me free of blame. And why be serious about a game? Hash the miller's tale. Some time ago, there was a rich old codger who lived in Oxford and who took a lodger. The fellow was a carpenter by trade, his lodger a poor student who had made some studies in the arts, but all his fancy turned to astrology and geomancy, and he could deal with certain propositions and make a forecast under some conditions about the likelihood of drought or showers for those who asked at favorable hours, or put a question how their luck would fall. In this or that, I can't describe them all. This lad was known as Nicholas the Gallant, and making love in secret was his talent, for he was very close and sly, and took advantage of his meek and girlish look. He rented a small chamber in the kip, all by himself, without companionship. He decked it charmingly with herbs and fruit, and he himself was sweeter than the root of licorice or any fragrant herb. His astronomic textbooks were superb. He had an astrolabe to match his art, and calculating counters laid apart on handy shelves that stood above his bed. His press was curtained coarsely and in red. Above there lay a gallant harp in sight, on which he played melodiously at night, with such a touch that all the chamber rang. It was the Virgin's Angelus he sang, and after that he sang King William's note, and people often blessed his merry throat. And that was how this charming scholar spent his time and money, which his friends had sent. This carpenter had married a new wife not long before, and loved her more than life. She was a girl of 18 years of age. Jealous he was, and kept her in the cage, for he was old, and she was wild and young. He thought himself quite likely to be stung. He might have known, were Cato on his shelf, a man should marry someone like himself. A man should pick an equal for his mate. Youth and old age are often in debate. However, he had fallen in the snare, and had to bear his cross as others bear. She was a fair young wife, her body as slender as any weasel's, and as soft and tender. She used to wear a girdle of striped silk. Her apron was as white as morning milk. Over her loins, all gusseted and pleated. White was her smock, embroidery repeated. Its pattern on the collar, front and back. Inside and out, it was of silk and black. The tapes and ribbons of her milky mutch were made to match her collar to a touch. She wore a broad silk fillet, rather high, and certainly she had a lecherous eye. And she had plucked her eyebrows into bows. Slenderly arched they were, and black as sloes, and a more truly blissful sight to see. She was than blossom on a cherry tree, and softer than the wool upon a wether. And by her girdle hung a purse of leather, tasseled with silk and silver droplets, pearled. If you went seeking up and down the world, the wisest man you met would have to wrench his fancy to imagine such a wench. And her complexion had a brighter tint than a new florin from the royal mint. As to her song, it was as loud and quick as any swallows chirping on a rick, and she would skip or play some game or other, like any kid or calf behind its mother. Her mouth was sweet as mead or honey, say, a hoard of apples lying in the hay. Skittish she was, and jolly as a colt, tall as a mast and upright as a bolt. Out of a bow, her collar it revealed, a brooch as big as boss upon a shield. High shoes she wore, and laced them to the top. She was a daisy, a lollipop, for any nobleman to take to bed, or some good man of yeoman stock to wed. Now, gentlemen, this gallant Nicholas one day began to romp and make a pass at this young woman in a mood of play, her husband being out down Osney way. Students are sly and giving way to whim. He made a grab and caught her by the quim, and said, "Unless I have my will of you, I'll die of secret love, oh darling, do." Then held her haunches hard and gave a cry, "Oh, love me all at once, or I shall die." She gave a spring, just like a skittish colt, boxed in a frame for shoeing, and with a jolt managed in time to wrench her head away, and said, "Give over, Nicholas, I say. No, I won't kiss you, stop it, let me go, or I shall scream, I'll let the neighbors know. Where are your manners? Take away your paws." Then Nicholas began to plead his cause, and spoke so fair in proffering what he could, that in the end she promised him she would, swearing she'd love him with a solemn promise, to be at his disposal by St. Thomas, when she could spy an opportunity. "My husband is so full of jealousy. Unless you watch your step and hold your breath, I know for certain it will be my death." She said, "So keep it well under your hat." "Oh, never mind about a thing like that," said he. "A scholar doesn't have to stir his wits so much to trick a carpenter." And so they both agreed to it, and swore to watch their chance, as I have said before. When things were settled, thus as they thought fit, and Nicholas had stroked her loins a bit, and kissed her sweetly, he took down his harp and played away a merry tune and sharp. It happened later she went off to church. This worthy wife, one holiday to search her conscience and to do the works of Christ. She put her work aside and she enticed the color to her face to make her mark. Her forehead shone, there was a parish clerk serving the church, whose name was Absalon. His hair was all in golden curls and shone. Just like a fan it strutted outwards, starting to left and right from an accomplished parting. Ruddy his face, his eyes as gray as goose. His shoes cut out in tracery, as in use. In old St. Paul's, the hose upon his feet showed scarlet through, and all his clothes were neat and proper, in a jacket of light blue, flounced at the waist and tagged with laces too. He went and wore a surplice just as gay and white as any blossom on the spray. God bless my soul, he was a merry knave. He knew how to let blood, cut hair and shave, and draw up legal deeds at other whiles. He used to dance in 20 different styles. After the current school at Oxford, though, casting his legs about him to and fro, he played a 2-stringed fiddle, did it proud, and sang a high falsetto, rather loud. And he was just as good on the guitar. There was no public house in town, or bar, he didn't visit with his merry face. If there were saucy barmaids round the place, he was a little squeamish in the matter of farting and satirical in chatter. This Absalon, so jolly in his ways, would bear the censer round on holy days, and sense the parish women he would cast many a lovelorn look before he passed, especially at this carpenter's young wife. Looking at her would make a happy life. She was so neat, so sweet, so lecherous, and I dare say if she had been a mouse, and he a cat, she'd have been pounced upon. In taking the collection, Absalon would find his heart was set in such a whirl of love, he would take nothing from a girl. For courtesy, he said, it wasn't right. That evening, when the moon was shining bright, he ups with his guitar, and off he tore, on the lookout for any paramours. Larky and amorous, away he strode, until he reached the carpenter's abode. A little after cock-crow, took his stand beside the casement window, close at hand. It was set low upon the cottage face, and started singing softly and with grace. Now, dearest lady, if thy pleasure be, in thoughts of love, think tenderly of me. On his guitar, he plucked a tuneful string. This carpenter awoke, and heard him sing, and turning to his wife said, Alison, wife, do you hear him? There goes Absalon, chanting away under our chamber wall. And she, yes, John, God knows I hear it all. If she thought more of it, she didn't tell. So things went on, what's better than all's well. From day to day this jolly Absalon, wooing away, became quite woebegone. He lay awake all night, and all the day, combed his thick locks, and tried to pass for gay, wooed her by go-between and wooed by proxy, swore to be page and servant to his doxy, trilled and rouladed like a nightingale, sent her sweet wine and mead and spicy ale, and wafers piping hot and jars of honey. And as she lived in town, he offered money, for there are some a money bag provokes, and some are won by kindness, some by strokes. Once, in the hope his talent might engage, he played the part of Herod on the stage. What was the good, were he as bold as brass? She was in love with gallant Nicholas. However Absalon might blow his horn, his labor won him nothing but her scorn. She looked upon him as her private ape, and held his earnest wooing all a jape. There is a proverb, true, as you may find, that out of sight is also out of mind. For nigh and sly has the advantage there, and much as Absalon might tear his hair, and rage at being seldom in her sight, Nicholas, nigh and sly, stood in his light. Now show your paces, Nicholas, you spark, and leave lamenting to the parish clerk. And so it happened that one Saturday, when the old carpenter was safe away, at Osney, Nicholas and Alison agreed at last in what was to be done. Nicholas was to exercise his wits, on her suspicious husband's foolish fits, and if so be the trick worked out all right, she then would sleep with Nicholas all night, for such was his desire and hers as well, and even quicker than it takes to tell. Young Nicholas, who simply couldn't wait, went to his room on tiptoe with a plate of food and drink, enough to last a day or two, and Alison was told to say, in case her husband asked for Nicholas, that she had no idea where he was, and that she hadn't set eyes on him all day, and thought he must be ill, she couldn't say. And more than once the maid had given a call, and shouted, but no answer came at all. So it continued, all that Saturday, without a sound from Nicholas, who lay upstairs and ate or slept as pleased him best, till Sunday, when the sun went down to rest. This foolish carpenter, meanwhile, began to wonder much at Nicholas his man. What could be wrong? How could it really be? I'm much afraid, he said, by Trinity, he's taken badly, God forbid he died. The world's unstable, that I can't deny. I saw a corpse this morning borne to kirk, and only Monday last I saw him work. He called his boy and said, now look alive. Go to his door, give it a shout or drive your shoulder at it, force the thing apart, and see what's wrong and come and give report. The boy went boldly up, and at the door, shouting and knocking, made a mighty din. What are you at? Hey, Nicholas, hi, look in. Wake up, is this a time to be abed? What should happen, but he fell down flat into a marl pit, he didn't foresee that. But by the saints we've reached a sorry pass. I can't help worrying for Nicholas. He shall be scolded for his studying. If I know how to scold, by Christ the King. Get me a staff to prise against the floor. Robin, you put your shoulder to the door. We'll shake the study out of him, I guess. The pair of them began to heave and press against the door. Happened the lad was strong, and so it didn't take them very long to heave it off its hinges. Down it came. Still as a stone lay Nicholas, with the same expression, gaping upwards into air. The carpenter supposed it was despair, and caught him by the shoulders mightily, shook him and shouted with asperity, what, Nicholas, hey, look down, is that a fashion? To act, wake up and think upon Christ's passion. I sign you with the cross from elves and sprites. And he began the spell for use at nights, in all four corners of the room and out, across the threshold too, and round about. Jesu Christ and Benedict sainted, bless this house from creature tainted. Drive away night hags, white paternoster. Where did you go, St. Peter's sister? And in the end the dandy Nicholas began to sigh, and must it come to pass? He said, must all the world be cast away? The carpenter replied, what's that you say? Put trust in God as we do, working men. Nicholas answered, fetch some liquor then, and afterwards, in strictest secrecy, I'll speak of something touching you and me. But not another soul must know, that's plain. This carpenter went down and came again, bringing some powerful ale, a largish quart. When each had had his share of this support, young Nicholas got up and shut the door, and, sitting down beside him on the floor, said to the carpenter, now, John, my dear, my excellent host, swear on your honor here, not to repeat a syllable I say, for here are Christ's intentions, to betray, which to a soul puts you among the lost, and vengeance for it at a bitter cost shall fall upon you, you'll be driven mad. Christ and his holy blood forbid it, lad. The silly fellow answered, I'm no blab. Though I should say it, I'm not given to gab. Say what you like, for I shall never tell man, woman, or child by him that harrowed hell. Now, John, said Nicholas, believe you me, I have found out by my astrology, and looking at the moon when it was bright, that Monday next, a quarter way through night, rain is to fall in torrents, such a scud. It will be twice as bad as Noah's flood. This world, he said, in just about an hour, shall all be drowned, it's such a hideous shower, and all mankind, with total loss of life. The carpenter exclaimed, "Alas, my wife! My little Alison, is she to drown?" And in his grief he very near fell down. "Is there no remedy," he said, "for this?" "Thanks be to God," said Nicholas, "there is. If you will do exactly what I say. And don't start thinking up some other way. In wise old Solomon you'll find the verse, 'Who takes advice shall never fare the worse.' And so if good advice is to prevail, I undertake with neither mast nor sail to save her yet, and save myself and you. Haven't you heard how Noah was saved too, when God forewarned him and his sons and daughters that all the world should sink beneath the waters?" "Yes," said the carpenter, "a long time back." "Haven't you heard," said Nicholas, "what a black business it was when Noah tried to whip his wife, who wouldn't come on board the ship? He'd have been better pleased, I'll undertake, with all that weather just about to break, if she had had a vessel of her own. Now what are we to do? We can't postpone the thing. It's coming soon, as I was saying. It calls for haste, not preaching or delaying. I want you now at once to hurry off and fetch a shallow tub or kneading trough for each of us, but see that they are large, and such as we can float in like a barge, and have them loaded with sufficient victual to last a day. We only need a little. The waters will abate and flow away round 9 o'clock upon the following day. Robin the lad mayn't know of this, poor knave, nor Jill the maid, those two I cannot save. Don't ask me why, and even if you do, I can't disclose God's secret thoughts to you. You should be satisfied, unless you're mad, to find as great a grace as Noah had. And I shall save your wife, you needn't doubt it. Now off you go, and hurry up about it. And when the tubs have been collected, 3, that's one for her, and for yourself and me. Then hang them in the roof below the thatching, that no one may discover what we're hatching. When you have finished doing what I said, and stowed the victuals in them overhead, also an axe to hack the ropes apart, so when the water rises, we can start. And lastly, when you've broken out the gable, the garden one, that's just above the stable, so that we may cast free without delay. After the mighty shower has gone away, you'll float as merrily, I undertake, as any lily-white duck behind her drake. And I'll call out, 'Hey, Alison, hey, John, cheer yourselves up, the flood will soon be gone.' And you'll shout back, 'Hail, Master Nichelet. Good morning, I can see you well, it's day. We shall be lords for all the rest of life, of all the world, like Noah and his wife. One thing I warn you of, it's only right. We must be very careful on the night, once we have safely managed to embark, to hold our tongues, to utter no remark, no cry or call, for we must fall to prayer. This is the Lord's dear will, so have a care. Your wife and you must hang some way apart, for there must be no sin before we start, no more in longing looks than in the deed. Those are your orders, off with you, Godspeed. Tomorrow night when everyone's asleep, we'll all go quietly upstairs and creep into our tubs, awaiting heaven's grace. And now be off, no time to put the case at greater length, no time to sermonize. The proverb says, 'Say nothing, send the wise.' You're wise enough, I do not have to teach you. Go, save our lives for us, as I beseech you." This silly carpenter then went his way, muttering to himself, "Alas the day," and told his wife in strictest secrecy. She was aware, far more indeed than he, what this quaint stratagem might have in sight, but she pretended to be dead with fright. "Alas," she said, "whatever it may cost, hurry and help, or we shall all be lost. I am your honest, true and wedded wife. Go, dearest husband, help to save my life." How fancy throws us into perturbation. People can die of mere imagination. So deep is the impression one can take. This silly carpenter began to quake. Before his eyes, there verily seemed to be the floods of Noah, wallowing like the sea, and drowning Alison, his honey pet. He wept and wailed, his features were all set. In grief, he sighed with many a doleful grunt. He went and got a tub, began to hunt. For kneading troughs, found two, and had them sent home to his house in secret. Then he went, and unbeknowns, he hung them from a rafter. With his own hands, he made 3 ladders after, uprights and rungs, to help them in their scheme of climbing where they hung upon the beam. He victualled tub and trough, and made all snug, with bread and cheese, and ale in a large jug, enough for 3 of them to last the day. And, just before completing this array, packed off the maid and his apprentice too, to London on a job they had to do. And on the Monday, when it drew to night, he shut his door and doused the candle light, and made quite sure all was as it should be. And shortly, up they clambered all the 3. Silent and separate, they began to pray. And Pater Noster Mum, said Nichelet. And Mum, said John, and Mum, said Alison. The carpenter's devotions being done, he sat quite still, then fell to prayer again, with one ear cocked, however, for the rain. The carpenter, with all the work he'd seen, fell dead asleep, round curfew must have been, maybe a little later on the whole. He groaned in sleep for travail of his soul, and snored because his head was turned awry. Down by their ladders, stalking from on high, came Nicholas and Alison, and sped softly downstairs, without a word, to bed. And where this carpenter was wont to be, the revels started and the melody. And thus lay Nicholas and Alison, busy in solace and the quest of fun, until the bell for lauds had started ringing, and in the chancel friars began their singing. This parish clerk, this amorous Absalon, love-stricken still and very woebegone, upon the Monday was in company at Osney with his friends for jollity, and chanced to ask a resident cloisterer what had become of John the carpenter. The fellow drew him out of church to say, "Don't know, not been at work since Saturday. I can't say where he is, I think he went to fetch the abbot timber, he is sent often enough for timber, has to go out to the grange and stop a day or so. If not, he's certainly at home today. But where he is I can't exactly say." Absalon was a jolly lad and light of heart, he thought. "I'll stay awake tonight. I'm certain that I haven't seen him stirring about his door since dawn. It's safe inferring that he's away. As I'm alive I'll go and tap his window softly at the crow of cock. The sill is low set on the wall. I shall see Alison and tell her all my love longing, and I can hardly miss some favor from her, at the least a kiss. I'll get some satisfaction anyway. There's been an itching in my mouth all day, and that's a sign of kissing at the least. And all last night I dreamt about a feast. I think I'll go and sleep an hour or 2, then wake and have some fun. That's what I'll do." The first cock crew at last, and thereupon up rose this jolly lover Absalon, in gayest clothes, garnished with that and this. But first he chewed a grain of licorice, to charm his breath before he combed his hair. Under his tongue the comfit nestling there would make him gracious. He began to roam towards the carpenters. He reached their home, and by the casement window took his stand. Breast high it stood, no higher than his hand. He gave a cough, it was a semi-sound. "Alison, honeycomb, are you around? Sweet cinnamon, my little pretty bird. Sweetheart, wake up and say a little word. You seldom think of me in all my woe. I sweat for love of you wherever I go. No wonder if I do, I pine and bleat, as any lambkin hungering for the teat. Believe me, darling, I'm so deep in love. I croon with longing like a turtle dove. I eat as little as a girl at school." "You go away," she answered, "you tomfool. There's no come up and kiss me here for you. I love another, and why shouldn't I too? Better than you, by Jesu Absalon. Take yourself off, or I shall throw a stone. I want to get some sleep, you go to hell." "Alas," said Absalon, "I knew it well. True love is always mocked and girded at. So kiss me, if you can't do more than that. For Jesu's love, and for the love of me." "And if I do, will you be off?" said she. "Promise you, darling," answered Absalon. "Get ready then. Wait, I'll put something on," she said, and then she added under breath, "To Nicholas, hush, we shall laugh to death." This Absalon went down upon his knees. "I am a lord," he thought, "and by degrees. There may be more to come, the plot may thicken." "Mercy, my love," he said, "your mouth, my chicken." She flung the window open, then in haste, and said, "Have done, come on, no time to waste. The neighbors here are always on the spy." Absalon started wiping his mouth dry. Dark was the night as pitch, as black as coal, and at the window out she put her hole. And Absalon, so fortune framed the farce, put up his mouth and kissed her naked arse, most savorously before he knew of this. And back he started, something was amiss. He knew quite well a woman has no beard, yet something rough and hairy had appeared. "What have I done?" he said. "Can that be you?" "Tee-hee," she cried and clapped the window to. Off went poor Absalon sadly through the dark. A beard," cried Nicholas the spark. God's body, that was something like a joke. And Absalon, overhearing what he spoke, bit on his lips and nearly threw a fit. In rage and thought, "I'll pay you back for it." Who's busy rubbing, scraping at his lips, with dust, with sand, with straw, with cloth, with chips. But Absalon, he thought, "I'll bring him down. I wouldn't let this go for all the town. I'd take my soul and sell it to the devil. To be revenged upon him, I'll get level. Oh God, why did I let myself be fooled?" The fiery heat of love by now had cooled, for from the time he kissed her hinder parts, he didn't give a tinker's curse for tarts. His malady was cured by this endeavor, and he defied all paramours whatever. So, weeping like a child that has been whipped, he turned away, across the road he slipped, and called on Gervase. Gervase was a smith. His forge was full of things for plowing with, and he was busy sharpening a share. Absalon knocked, and with an easy air called, "Gervase, open up the door, come on." "What's that? Who's there?" "It's me, it's Absalon." "What Absalon? By Jesus' blessed tree. You're early up, hey, benedicity." "What's wrong? Some jolly girl as like as not has coaxed you out and set you on the trot. Bless Saint Neot, you know the thing I mean." But Absalon, who didn't give a bean, for all his joking, offered no debate. He had a good deal more upon his plate. Then Gervase knew and said, "Would it be fair to borrow that coulter in the chimney there? The hot ones see it, I've a job to do. It won't take long, I'll bring it back to you." Gervase replied, "Why, if you asked for gold, a bag of sovereigns or of wealth untold, it should be yours, as I'm an honest smith. But Christ, why borrow that to do it with?" "Let that," said Absalon, "be as it may. You'll hear about it all some other day." He caught the coulter up, the haft was cool, and left the smithy softly with the tool, crept to the little window in the wall, and coughed. He knocked and gave a little call. Under the window, as he had before, Alison said, "There's someone at the door." "Who's knocking there? I'll warn it's a thief." "Why no," said he, "my little flower leaf. It's your own Absalon, my sweetie thing. Look what I've brought you, it's a golden ring. My mother gave me, as I may be saved. It's very fine, and prettily engraved. I'll give it to you, darling, for a kiss." Now Nicholas had risen for a piss, and thought he could improve upon the jape, and make him kiss his arse ere he escape. And opening the window with a jerk, stuck out his arse, a handsome piece of work, buttocks and all, as far as to the haunch. Said Absalon, all set to make a launch, "Speak, pretty bird, I know not where thou art." This Nicholas at once let fly a fart, as loud as if it were a thunderclap. He was near blinded by the blast, poor chap, but his hot iron was ready with a thump. He smote him in the middle of the rump. Off went the skin a hand's breadth roundabout, where the hot coulter struck and burned it out. Such was the pain, he thought he must be dying, and mad with agony, he started crying. "Help, water, water, help, for heaven's love." The carpenter, startled from sleep above, and hearing shouts for water and a thud, thought, "Heaven help us, here comes Noel's flood." And up he sat, and with no more ado, he took his axe and smote the ropes in two. And down went everything, he didn't stop to sell his bread and ale, but came down flop upon the floor and fainted right away. Up started Alison and Nichelet, and shouted, "Help!" and "Murder!" in the street. The neighbors all came running up in heat, and stood there staring at the wretched man. He lay there fainting, pale beneath his tan. His arm in falling had been broken double, but still he was obliged to face his trouble. For when he spoke, he was at once borne down by Nicholas and his wife. They told the town that he was mad. There got into his blood some sort of nonsense about Noel's flood. That vain imaginings and fantasy had made him buy the kneading tubs, that he had hung them in the rafters up above, and that he'd begged them both for heaven's love to sit up in the roof for company. All started laughing at this lunacy, and streamed upstairs to gape and pry and poke, and treated all his sufferings as a joke. No matter what the carpenter asserted, it went for nothing. No one was converted. With powerful oaths they swore the fellow down, and he was held for mad by all the town. The students all ganged up with one another, saying, "The fellow's crazy, my dear brother." And everyone among them laughed and joked. And so the carpenter's wife was truly poked, as if his jealousy to justify. And Absalon has kissed her nether eye, and Nicholas is branded on the bum. And God bring all of us to kingdom come.